When I was about 19, I lived in my parents' house in South Texas, in one of the older, more forgotten parts of town. The neighborhood was sparse, with only a handful of houses scattered across the area, remnants of a time long past. Our home was weathered by years of harsh sun and relentless storms, its wooden frame creaking with age. It had stood for nearly a century, bearing silent witness to countless stories, some remembered, others lost to time. One warm night, I lay in bed with my window open, the only barrier between me and the darkness outside being a thin mesh screen. The air was still, and the usual nighttime symphony of insects and distant dogs filled the void. But then something else broke through the silence, a deep, guttural sound unlike anything I had ever heard before. It wasn't just a growl, it was something more primal, more menacing. I had heard plenty of animal sounds in my life, from the familiar howls of coyotes to the eerie cries of owls, even the roars of wild beasts on television. But this was different. It carried a weight, a presence, as if some unseen force had wandered into town, exhausted, starving, searching. A shiver ran down my spine. The next morning I told my mother about it, expecting some reassurance. Instead, she gave an offhand comment, something vague. 2 weeks passed, and then another strange occurrence rattled my senses. It was late at night again when I heard it. A woman's wail, long and drawn out, carried by the wind. It came from just beyond our backyard, near an old one-story apartment house. At first, I thought it might be some domestic dispute or maybe a tragedy unfolding in the night, but the sound never changed. It was frantic or desperate. It was methodical, repetitive, unnatural. I sat frozen, listening. The cry continued, undisturbed by the passage of time. Was it a woman in pain? Or was it something else? Something imitating what it thought was human? The realization made my skin crawl. Decades later, I would learn of stories, tales of creatures that mimic human voices, replaying cries of distress to lure in the unsuspecting, to take them, to make them disappear. I had never seen what lurked in the shadows that night, but something in my soul whispered that it was not of this world. 25 years later, I was still living in my parents' old home, co-owned by me and a sibling. Life had carried on, but the strangeness had never truly left. Not long after new neighbors moved in next door, eerie things began happening again. My outdoor cats, whom I had cared for, started turning up dead, one after another. At first, I assumed it was the work of local predators. Then one night, I caught a possum dragging a kitten away. I chased it off, but something about the whole ordeal felt wrong. Eventually, I confided in my neighbors, and together we dealt with the tequashas, the possums that had been lurking too close. Yet, a lingering unease remained. We took it a step further, visiting the church to get crosses blessed, sensing that something unnatural was at play. Then, one night, as we stood outside gazing toward the old abandoned church nearby, the mother next door fixed her eyes on its darkened window. She muttered almost to herself, "It looks like a bad spirit." The air around us shifted. Within seconds, a thick, unnatural fog rolled in, swallowing the backyard in a ghostly embrace. Then came the sound, low, guttural, and uncomfortably close. It growled, deep and guttural, like a beast poised just beyond sight. But there was nothing there. No one spoke, but the silence between us was thick with understanding. Then, finally, Jicama, one of my neighbors, broke the tension. "Did you hear that?" Of course, we had all heard it, and we did the only thing we knew. We prayed and talked about something else. As if in response, the fog began to thin, retreating like a tide pulling back to the depths. The area became very clear with no fog. Whatever it was, it had heard us. And perhaps it had felt threatened. I often wonder if whatever it was had some kind of power to manipulate fog, because after we started talking about something else, all the fog went away. After that night, the disturbances stopped. The odd occurrences ceased, replaced only by the ordinary discomforts of life. Heat, insects, the wear and tear of an aging house, but I still wonder about that time. I moved away several months later, yet the memories of those nights have never left me. And that was just one of my encounters. There have been others, stories I have yet to tell.